Hello everyone, my name is Shelby and this is the series where I reveal what is inside these mystery pottery molds I found on Gumtree. Hello and welcome to Mould 49. Can you believe we're almost at 50 and this week would have to be one of my favorite creations so far. That's such a big call, but I am absolutely obsessed with the finished results and you have to watch beyond the kiln because I do something after they come out of the kiln that makes them so much better. So I pour this one up. It has two sides. I didn't film the other side on the same day, so that's why I've had a little outfit change here, but there's two sides, so I pour both sides up. This mold had a label on either side, so if you're cluey enough, you'll be able to read it before I reveal it. But the mold is really old. It's been used a lot, so it's got a lot of deterioration. I noticed that it was dripping from one side because it's lost a little bit of plaster, but that's okay. I can still use it. The clay eventually seals up, and if you squeeze it, the clay sort of seals up the little hole that it drips from. But I let that set, it's all good, it all works out, and I open it up to reveal this gorgeous set of mushroom salt and pepper shakers. So as I said before, it's really deteriorated. It's a really old mold as well. There's lots of chips and burrs, but I can still use it. It still works really great. I almost want to remake this mold for myself. I can make my own molds as well out of plaster, so I would love to do that just to give this item new life, just because I love this piece so much. So the mushroom itself is such a gorgeous shape. It's kind of like on a little cute lean. The only issue with the mold being so deteriorated is that the whole of the base is rather large. So I decided I'm not going to turn these into salt and pepper shakers just because it's made, it's just kind of warped it a little bit just because of the deterioration on the top of the mold. So I'm going to do something cute with these regardless. You can see on the outside there's lots of little dints and bubbles and burrs, and that's just from the plaster deteriorating and dissolving over time. So these are fine. All I have to do is sponge them down, but it is going to be a little bit risky using this mold given it's so rough at the moment. I almost need to pour these again and make a new mold out of the creations that come out of it. So I said I was going to do something quirky with these because I didn't want to do them salt and pepper shakers just because the base is a little bit wonky. It's going to be hard to find a plug. I've had issues with trying to find plugs before. So I decided I'm going to turn these into some little mushroom fairy houses, but they're not just going to be fairy houses. They're going to be fairy mushroom incense holder houses. That was a mouthful. So what I did here was I cut some little holes out of the base of the mushroom, and that is to act as some airflow for the incense dish because this is quite an enclosed shape. And then I've carved out a little door which I'm attaching now, and then I made a little chimney and attached that. So I'm just waiting for that to dry before I trim it back to the short length. And then because there's like a lot of mushroom incense dishes out there. There's a few people that create these, and I didn't want to do something that had already been done or from what I could see, and I wanted it to be my own style of mushroom incense house. So I created these little daisy windows and attached them so it added to this sort of really beautiful cottage garden fairy look. And I actually love how these daisies turned out. So I created them by using a little sort of like earring circle cutter, and then I cut that into 6 and then sort of curved the edges of the circle around and then added a little spot of clay in the middle to make the daisy. I attach everything by cross hatching with a wire brush and adding a bit of slip and joining that way. Where it looks like the joint isn't that strong, I add a little bit of a coil and smooth it over. So that's how I did the fairy house part. I also couldn't show you, but I did cut the hole into the chimney so that the smoke from the incense will billow out of the chimney as if someone's cooking something inside the little house. So I couldn't show you that because my hand, every time I tried to film it, covered me cutting the hole, and it just looked like my hand. So I didn't show you that part, but that's how I cut it out. Alrighty-roo. So with these pieces, I was initially going for a color palette and I was doing like these 70s mushrooms, like those Sears Mary mushrooms that are so popular and people collect them. But I just love them so much. I wanted to do a rainbow mushroom. I had poured so many. I was trying to get like every single color, but I obviously did not do enough. I think there's about 10 mushrooms, so I could definitely not do all the colors. But initially was going for that 70s color palette, but then just went for full rainbow and just really picked random colors just to enjoy the process. I think for the past couple of weeks, I have been experiencing a lot of creative burnout. I've sort of just been pushing through, and it didn't really help that I was doing molds that personally weren't my aesthetic or were maybe a themed piece that I wouldn't necessarily own or go out of my way to make if I weren't doing this series. So it was becoming really challenging to sort of, I guess, film and create each week. But this week really shifted my mentality, and I am so grateful for these little mushrooms. I adore anything that's sort of whimsical, fairy garden, anything to do with mushrooms at the moment. I don't know whether that's because they're really trendy or I've always loved mushrooms, but I really love all that sort of stuff. Little frogs, anything that's fairy garden themed, I absolutely love it. And I think it's like my inner child just making all the quirky art that I wish I could have made when I was a child. I think that that's where this sort of fandom comes from. And I just sort of love this idea of a mystical, magical world beyond our own beauty, I guess, is why I love these pieces so much. And when I opened this to find these mushrooms, I thought this is going to be such a fun week. I feel like I'm going to enjoy this so much, and I very much did. I love when I can sort of think really abstract, or well, it's not really abstract, it's just think really creatively about what I'm going to do with the piece. So I think, like, for example, last week it didn't lead much to interpretation or adjusting the mold to do something whimsical or wacky or weird or strange with it, because it was the item and that's what it was. With these mushrooms, I could do so much with them, and I can add so much to them, and I can change and alter them. I can do lots of different designs on them. I could do plain glaze on them if I wanted to, and just enjoy the way the glaze reacts on the tops. I just love pieces like this where I can really interpret them my own way and bring my imagination to life on them. And being able to craft the little fairy houses was so wonderful that I really reminded myself of why I love pottery so much. And I think that that was such a refreshing thing after a couple of weeks of doing molds where I wasn't absolutely in love with them and I couldn't really interpret them in my own way. So this is, a really wonderful week, and I'm so happy with the finished results. So I popped them in the kiln with their glaze overnight, and here is the finished result. I am so proud. Like, I nearly cried opening the kiln, and I know that sounds like, oh, come on, girl, but like, I was so happy with these. They are so special, and they are exactly how I imagined them to be. They're just so cute as a set. The houses look amazing. And the plates, you might remember the plates from an earlier reveal. They didn't warp this week. I don't know what I did differently, but they didn't warp. Maybe the kiln just had a better flow of heat. I don't know. But they didn't warp. Now, I said at the start, you've got to watch till the end, because this isn't it. This isn't the finished result. I thought, how am I going to jazz up these plates and make them very fairy garden-esque? And I have worked with resin and pressed flowers before, so I decided that with the plates I was going to add some pressed flowers and encase them in resin within the rim of the saucer. So I have a Barnes resin. I can put a link in the little caption if you would like to get this resin. It's just a clear resin. And I press a lot of flowers just as a hobby, and I store them in this little box. I've obviously got way too many flowers now because I press so many. And then I encase them in resin. I've done some pottery work before where I've encased flowers in resin, but I don't do it often because it's sort of really fiddly and really tricky, and the resin gets everywhere, and yeah, there's a lot to do and a lot to set up. And I thought that this would make it so special and really just get me out of my creative burnout rut by trying resin again and playing around with it on this saucer. The other reason I wanted to do this is because I just felt like it just elevated that fairy garden vibe by actually having beautiful dried florals right immersed into these incense dishes. It's literally like a fairy has gone out and collected all these flowers as like a treasure trove and surrounded their little mushroom house with them like a ring of mushrooms, but a ring of flowers around the mushroom. I just thought that this was a way I could make this piece so much more beautiful, and I just really wanted to do it and imagined it and thought it was going to turn out really well. I should also mention, because I'm sure I'm going to get comments, is that this resin is safe for heat with the incense, so there's no problem with that. And the flowers will be encased in the resin, so they won't be flammable underneath once it's covered in the resin. So to add a little bit more magic to this piece, I sprinkled some coarse coral glitter in there. Now, I'm not a glitter person, but I saw this glitter when I was looking for sort of like in the craft store for something a little bit more to add to this to make it more magical. And I really liked the size of this glitter because I just felt it didn't look as tacky, and it's nice and chunky that it just feels like magic fairy dust within the resin. And it's just, oh, it just looks so pretty. I love florals, and it's just so beautiful seeing them encased and preserved in history. I wasn't going to fill the inner rim of the saucer, but I was a little bit heavy-handed with the resin, so I ended up filling that up too. But as I said before, it's completely safe to use with incense. And then just to make it feel a bit complete and still keep that ring of rosy feel around the saucer, I added the glitter in the center as well. It was a little bit windy, so the glitter kept going to one side, but that's okay. It's all part of the process. I then filled in the other saucer with some more florals. All of these have been sourced from my garden or friends' gardens, or I've found things on the footpath when I'm going for a walk nearby. They're mostly all natives, so I've got some baronias in my front garden, some flowering gum in the back garden. There's golden water was just in bloom, which was so beautiful, and then a few other little bits and bobs that I've collected along the way and pressed in my little flower press. But here is what they look like as they're setting. I was a little bit nervous because I literally pulled these out yesterday before I posted this YouTube, and I was worried they weren't going to set in time. So I will, whilst they're setting, I will show you the mushrooms finished result because they are wonderful, they are magical, I am in love, they are so precious. I've made like a whole city of mushrooms, or like a little township. I checked to make sure that the mushrooms worked really well and that the smoke actually billowed out of the chimney. It honestly looks like there's little fairies or gnomes or something living inside these, and they're sitting by the fire knitting or reading a book. I'm so proud of these. I am so in love. This is what it's potentially going to look like once the resin sets. I really left this the last minute adding the resin, and it needs to cure for 12 hours, but I just wanted to float it over the top. I'll probably post pictures of this on my other social media channels on Instagram and TikTok, so go check those out if you use those. But here they are as their little village of mushroom houses. They're just, I'm so proud this week, and I am so refreshed and reminded of why I love pottery so much. These are just perfection. What do you think of this week's reveal? Are you as obsessed as I am? Because I'm just so in love. Let me know in the comments and make sure to like, follow, do your thing, engage with this video. And here is your sneak peek for next week's reveal. Thank you so much for watching. I adore you all so much. Thank you for following along this journey.